cluster about usage-based discovery. And hopefully we're going to have a fun, well, at least I'm going to have fun, I know, but hopefully this is going to be fun for everybody today. We're going to try an experiment in crowdsourcing, and I'll explain that a little bit more. First, I want to go through some of the logistics. I think if you're all here, you already have gotten into the Kiko chat and the Zoom call. So we should be good there. Now this Kiko chat, this 722 Foraging for Dataset Usage Relationships, that document is going to be our keystone document for this session. And so there should be pointers to everything you need to get through the session in this document. And if we're missing anything, this is where we'll usually put it. I see everybody's already, sharing your name and affiliation and location in the Zoom chat, so that's good. I want to remind everybody about community participation guidelines. We are agreeing to adhere to the ESIP community participation guidelines, and there's a link there to report any issues that you may run into. So let's get to the goal of this session. The goal is going to be provide high quality dataset article relationships for the Usesbased Discoveries graph database. So I'm going to take you on a little quick little tour of why we're doing this and what the key benefits are. Actually going to go through this introduction pretty quickly so that we can get to the the meat of the session. This usage-based discovery is a journey that the ESIP discovery cluster's been on since I think it was the ESIP winter meeting in 2019. So it's still a fairly young effort, although we're using a very old cluster to accomplish it. And the starting premise of usage-based discovery is that when users are coming looking for data sets, they have it with the idea to use that data set for a particular purpose. Now, the current discovery interfaces tend to focus on the data set characteristics, so descriptions about the data sets, a lot of metadata, like the instrument, the platform, things like that. And that's great for a lot of situations, but you kind of have to be an expert in those metadata attributes and how they apply to data sets. And there's also the issue that often the potential uses of those data sets will not show up anywhere in the metadata. So take rainfall data sets, for example. If I search for floods in the Earth Data Search, the Usesbased search tool, if I search for floods, I don't see any rainfall data sets. And that's because we haven't described any of the rainfall data sets as being flood because they're not flood data sets. On the other hand, it's intuitively obvious and borne out by evidence that actually rainfall is used a lot in flood prediction, flood monitoring, things like that. So the new paradigm is this usage-based discovery is what data sets does a similar application or study use? The idea being that that's at least a good starting point for what data sets you may want to use if you're working on, like I said, a similar study. And the way that we implement that underneath the covers is actually very simple. It's a graph database. And when I say graph, I'm not talking about charts. What I'm talking about is the graph you associate with the graph database. And so it's basically, it focuses on the relationship between two entities. And the key entities in this case are a research article, which is an example of usage of that data set and the data set. And so the simple graph is this article uses this data set. We actually have one other important concept in here, which is called topic. And that's something that we will also be adding to the graph database. It'll be something on the order of article is about this topic. And so we've actually created a functioning user interface. It's in pretty good shape. I mean, there's still the odd bug or two. There's still some modifications we may want to do to the user interface design, but it is a really good shape. And I want to thank all my previous interns that worked on this, as well as Vinny and Verso, who's been doing a great job in bringing this into a kind of a production mode tool. So now what we need to get to is we need to fill this with content. Right now it's fairly content light. And so we're kind of, we started off with the proof of concept where we're foraging for these relationships, data sets, and the various usages. And I got to tell you, it was really a proof of concept. And it turns out that most of the relationships we found, in that first phase were either not correct or not ideal or spurious. We were trying a variety of automated methods and manual methods. And a lot of that was really to figure out what the best methods were. So now we have a handle on some of those good methods. We're kind of in the artisanal phase, if you will, where our small team has been doing from time to time. We'll go do a little foraging and add a few data sets that we know are right. So now what we're trying to do is we're trying to move to the next level on this scale out, which is crowdsourcing. And this is where you come in. You are essentially our first crowd. And then the ideal is to use the information that's obtained from crowdsourcing in terms of the data set usage relationships and the topics that usage falls into, to use that crowdsourced information in a machine learning program model that will allow us to scale up essentially as far as we want to, as far as the information will take us. So we need 3 pieces of information to drive this tool. There are actually other pieces that we pull into the tool, but if we have these 3 pieces, it's really all we need to get the rest of the information. One is we need this research article. We'll be focusing on articles. We actually have in the tool both applications and articles, but I have to warn you, applications are much more complicated to deal with. So we're going to focus on research articles in this session. So we need a research article, and we're going to identify that by its DOI. If it doesn't have a DOI, it's a coach's decision as to whether to put it in there with, say, a URL or something, but there's got to be something that we can actually get the user to that article for. And, ESIP has been promoting, data citation via DOI for a long time. And so we're sort of eating our own dog food here. So we want the research article identified by its DOI. We want the data sets that were used by that research article. And again, also, we prefer the DOIs. Now, we recognize in some fields, DOIs are rare or hard to come by. And so, again, that's going to be a kind of a coach's decision on what to put in there instead of a DOI. If you've got a really good set of data sets you want to get in, that you think the user community should be aware of for this particular topic. The only important thing is that there needs to be enough information in whatever you put in there that a user can get to the data set, because that's what this is all about. You see this little button here, see data set. We want to take them to that actual data set. And then the third piece is the research topic. And the reason we need the research topic is, there are literally, it's probably 10 to the, I'm going to guess 10 to the 6 order of articles about Earth observation data sets. I might even be underestimating that. So obviously, we can't put all the research articles in one, column. And so we need to give the user a way to narrow down a little bit. So we developed a number of topics. So this is how the dataset usage foraging usually works. There are some variants on this, and you may even invent some new techniques or some new procedures. But basically, we find research articles that use Earth science data sets. And again, we want the research article by the DOI if available, or a URL if not, a stable URL. We want the Earth science data sets, and actually I'm going to broaden this Earth science because we are including team life, which is going to be getting into some ecological or biological sciences. The second step is classifying the article according to the topic. Third step is identifying the actual data sets used in the article, and then submitting the article DOI and the dataset DOI. And actually, I left off the research topic via a Google form. We ask you for a couple of additional pieces of information in that Google form, but they aren't required fields. Just the article information, the dataset information, and the topic, or at least the main topic. And so with that, what I want to do is just take you through a couple of very quick demos. In fact, let me go my screen. So like I said, we've tried to put everything in this document that you could possibly need. So we've got this presentation is this, what are we doing today? Foraging. I mentioned we're going to find, we're going to classify, we're going to identify, and then we're going to submit. And we're going to break up into teams, and each of these teams will have a breakout room. So team flood will have a room, and they'll be looking for data sets related to flooding. It's okay if you run across data set, the primary topic is something else, and that will often happen, and that's fine. Put in what that primary topic is, and then add flooding as a secondary topic. We've got another one on team fire. This can be any kind of fire. Could be wildfires, could be agricultural fires. Trying to think, in some cases it might be man-made fires. So whatever you find that's related to fire and Earth observations. Then we got team life, and this one is really the broadest potentially. We started this with biodiversity in mind, but there's also a number of biomass things, vegetation that also fit into the life category. And then, I've lost my. And then team sea level, this is actually the narrowest of the categories. We're going to kind of experiment to see, which of these is easier to forage, a narrow category or a very broad category. Then I put anybody that wants to do something other than these 4 categories, put you into crew motley, which is, anything related to Earth observations you want to do. And now for each one of these, we're also going to have coaches available for you. Irina Gerasimov and Vinny Inverso will be coaching Team Flood. Sarah Lafia, our fellow, and Vanessa Chapman, one of our machine learning researchers, will be coaching Team Fire. Team Life will be coached by Jonathan Blythe and Brian Wee, 2 of the sort of leading forces in this discovery effort. And then Team Sea Level will be coached by Ed Armstrong, who's something of a discipline expert from the PODAC, and Andrew Kramer, who's another one of our machine learning researchers. And then for Crew Motley, it'll be me and Doug Newman coaching. So as we get into the process, there will be a Zoom chat. And so if you've got any questions about, how to do things, if you've got ideas on how to do things better, anything, especially where you want the feedback of the coach, I'll ask you to paste it into that Zoom chat in your breakout room. Now, once we verify these, so these are not going to directly go into the database. I mentioned there's going to be a Google form. And so let me take you through one of these forms. All right, so the first thing we would like you to do is, if you have an ORC ID, put it in the first blank, because when we eventually load them into the database, if there's an ORC ID attached to it, we can actually apply credit. And I'll show you where that credit shows up. Now required though is we are going to want that article DOI. Again, if you really can't find a DOI and you really want to keep this article because it's a really good one, then put in a stable URL. We would like to get the article title, but honestly, if we have the DOI, we can always go back and get that later. So if you have the title easily available, please put it in, but don't worry about it. Then the other requirement is this primary topic. And so for this one, it's most likely to be floods, for instance. And so we click this down here, and we might, some of these have been actually tailored to the particular team. And then if there are secondary topics as well, go ahead and check as many of these secondary topics as apply. And then once you've checked that, you click this next button. It's going to make me put in something. All right. You're going to see how strict we are about our validation here. Okay, so then we go to the next, and now we need at least one data set with a DOI, or like I said, talk to your coach about other alternatives for things that can get the user to the data. And then you come down here. So I'm just going to put a test DOI again, and submit. And then this is going to come back, and you're going to see the submit another response. So keep on going, as many as you feel like finding. I will warn you that this can be much more difficult than it seems at first. At first, it looks like, oh man, this is going to be so easy. But it turns out that not a lot of researchers are really properly citing data sets these days. So it's often not as easy as you might think. Let's see, what else I want to do. Oh, right. And the one other thing I wanted to do is to go back here, not there. Let's go back here. I did want to take you on like a quick little tour of the actual tool. And did I actually put that in here? Oh, yes. Okay, here it is. So here's the link to the tool. You'll see this funky AWS link that's going to redirect. So this gives you an idea of all the topics that we've got. We've got a blank topic slipped in through my user error, but the rest of these topics, I think we have something for every one of them as an example. So for instance, you would click down to sea level, and here you would see you've got different types, either application or research. And this one, all of them are research. And you can change at this point to different topics as well. And then what you would do is, as a user, when you click on one of these things, you would bring up that particular article, and this website will take you to the DOI resolution of that article. And then over here on the right-hand side are all these painstakingly curated data set usage relationships that have been found by people and added into the user interface. And then the one last thing I want to show you before we go to our breakout rooms, I will take some questions, by the way. The last thing I want to show you is we have put in this little quick start for how to do this. Because like I said, this can be hard if we just throw you out there to the wolves, which honestly, I did with the first few sets of interns that worked on this. And so we learned that, when you're coming in, fresh, this can be a very difficult thing. Now, one of the most productive techniques that we found is to take the DOI for a likely data set. In this case, this is a TRIM data set, which is a tropical rainfall measuring mission. And then to pair that with a topic that you're interested in this case, flood. And it could be any search term related to that topic. I might have put in inundation, for instance, and I might get a different set. And then to do a search on those. And so I'm going to do a quick little demo here. So if you search on this one, Scholar, and it's scholar.google.com, one of my favorite resources, by the way. You paste this in and then do the search. The first thing it brings back is actually the data set documentation for that data set, which is actually kind of nice. But the other thing that it brings that you see is the see all results here. This is saying, oh, I know the best result for your search. And yeah, that's a pretty good guess, actually. But in this case, we're interested in the usage of this. And so if you say see all results, this is going to show you all the articles where this DOI appears. And this string is not the kind of thing you use in everyday English, right? So if you see that string, you're almost 100% guaranteed that it's a true hit. And so then the next thing to do is to go and get the DOI for the actual article. In some cases, you have to click through to see. That's a book. That's probably a way to do that one, but I don't know what it is. So let me try another one. Let's try a non-book. Let's try this one. And so what you'll see for most articles is you'll get this kind of title, abstract, and the DOI is going to be here. Come on, don't make a liar of me. Let's see what this looks like. Sometimes you'll have to look for the citation to get the DOI. And honestly, sometimes there won't be a DOI for this. But this actually looks like there's a DOI. So,
Chris, it looks like if you expand the article information up top, it'll show the
here
DOI.
After this 10.10.88. But the other thing you're looking. Oh, you're probably right. And thanks, Vanessa. Yes, so sometimes you have to expand things. Sometimes it'll be article information. Other times it'll be cite this article. That's what Nature likes to use. And then the other thing you want to do at this point, though, is you want to look through the abstract to make sure it really is about the topic you were searching on, because we have seen some false positives. For instance, you could come back with a flood basalt article. You'd said that is like nothing like floods. In this particular one, we see, areas prone to flood. So this is a good hit. And then you might look for other things as well that are other kind of ancillary topics. Just briefly, we might see, you might say, add this to clouds here. This would be a judgment call on some of those secondary topics. You kind of have to put yourself in the shoes of the user and say, well, if I added this topic and a user were following this, would they be upset that this is pointless, or would they be more like, oh yeah, that's kind of interesting? So that's the sort of thing you need to do, is put yourself in the user's shoes. All right, so I'm going to stop there, take a breath, and see if we have any questions before we go to the breakout rooms.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Ted.
This seems very similar to something called the PID graph. And I'm wondering how if the PID graph is created from DOIs or ORCIDs or RORs by Crossref and DataSite and ORCID all working together mostly through event data. Have you thought about how this effort integrates with that one?
Well, one of the nice things about this crowdsourcing that we're doing is I'm learning about all kinds of stuff I didn't know about. So the short answer is no, I don't have an answer for you, but the long answer is I'll probably have an idea by the end of the day when I get a chance to look at it.
Because DataSite Commons is another is a search interface based on GraphQL for the PID graph. But I agree with you completely that there's a dearth of citations of data from papers, but what will be really interesting is once you discover these relationships between papers and data sets, to feed them into the DataSite metadata that you guys are creating to get DOIs for those data sets,
right?
Because then those connections would get reflected in the big picture.
Right, and that's a good point. That's a good point. Because
finding them is hard.
There is another way to do this. So some of the sort of experts amongst you that that know, for instance, EOS to short names is almost as good as a DOI. So if I type in something like, I'm not going to do this for flood, but if I do this for fire, there's a product that I happen to know because I've been working with this data for so long. There's a product whose short name is MORL2. And again, this is something you don't use in ordinary conversation. And so if I see Modo4L2 show up in an article, chances are all really good that it's used in that particular data set. And so the catch here is that I don't have the DOI at this point, but I can go and get the DOI from the repository, the data repository, and that allows me to finalize that DOI to DOI link between data sets and citations. And so as we accumulate those, I think those would be really valuable additions to things like the PID graph.
Yeah.
All right.
And when you say this short name is almost as good as the DOI, it's the feature that it's missing is this connection to the larger infrastructure, publishing infrastructure all over the world.
Yes, that's true. Ed, you have your hand up.
Oh yeah, just I think hopefully we won't come across this use case, but I mean, does everybody when they're perusing these articles, do they have access to articles that might be behind these paywalls and stuff? So hopefully the captains or something have access and through conversations in the chat with the
and some of us do, and sometimes you have to go to that. I mean, there are some cases where you can get by with just the title and the abstract. So in other words, if you've searched on the DOI, you know that DOI is in the paper, even though it might not be, you might not be able to see the whole paper. In that case, you've got the dataset DOI. All you need is the article DOI and the research topic. And you can get those from what's often in front of the paywall. But I
Yeah,
agree,
yeah,
it's much better if you can click through to the full article to double check everything. Having said that, if you can't click through, try this technique where you get the data sets via the DOI, basically search on that data set DOI, and then get the topic from the title and the abstract.
Yeah. I mean, but sometimes with regards to the article, you don't really know what DOIs to use yet without inspecting it, right? So, I mean,
unless you
that's kind of-
search on that DOI. If you search on that DOI
Yeah.
and it comes back, that's a pretty reliable indication.
Right, yeah, but many times you don't know that, or sometimes you don't know that data set DOI that they use in that particular study, right? So you have to have some a priori knowledge that they use that particular data set DOI.
Yeah, you have to have a DOI to start with. You have to have a data set DOI like this one that I did for the floods. But if you have, and so we have in the starter pack, we've got a list of starter DOIs of some of the more popular data sets. And also, ask your coaches if they're able to click through. I know I can click through because I'm on the Goddard VPN. Some of you will have access through your universities, but again, if you don't, there are these alternate techniques that you can use. Madison, do you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I do. So when we're looking at based on data set DOIs, are we looking, or I guess just in general in this exercise, does it matter where the data were published? Are we looking for data from big organizations like NASA, NOAA, USGS, or any data published by anyone that's relevant to topics?
It can be anything published by anyone. And actually the reason that we like to get a DOI is because that means it's typically in some kind of a controlled repository, whether it's a big one or a small one. It's in a repository that has some stewardship applied to it.
Okay.
That's the idea anyways. Now, having said that, I have found, individual investigators assigning DOIs to their data sets. And it turns out that they're not always very good at it, in the sense that they don't keep up with it, and you end up with dead DOI links. So if it's a small producer, you might try following that DOI to make sure it takes you to a legit landing page.
Okay, that sounds good. And then one other thing, are you familiar with XDD, the extract dark data, something like that? It used to be Geo Deep Dive. I can't remember.
Yes. Yeah, I was talking with Sky about that yesterday.
Okay, because we've done something a little similar with them in kind of a more automated fashion, but it might be relevant for when you get to the machine learning stage.
Yes, that's a good tip. Thank you. All right. Any other questions before we go to the? Oh, yes. And Ken, I did find at least 2 shoulders in NOAA. I don't know how many others there are. Most of the ones I saw were the 7289. Let's see. Oh, yeah. One other thing. I'm going to encourage you to sort of keep the chat active in your breakout rooms. So, for instance, when you find a good article, go ahead and paste that article name into the chat to give others an idea of how the progress is going. And some people want to avoid duplicates that way. I'm actually happy if we get duplicates, because I think it would be interesting to see if we get different classifications from different people about the same article. So don't worry about the duplicates too much, but yeah, do try to keep the Zoom chat active with your progress on the data set foraging. And now I think Margaret, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Maybe you answered this already and I just missed it. I'm still a little bit unclear on your goal. Are you looking for these relationships so that you can contribute them to something like DataSite or Scholex, or are you creating this graph database that's about earth science data?
We are creating this graph database that the usage-based discovery tool needs in order to function. This is really...
Okay.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, from what Ted said, it sounded like you were using the same format as DataSite.
Yes, we are using DOIs because that is the most, what's the word? That's the most reliable identifier / locator that we know of.
So would it make sense I guess I'm wondering, I mean, if we discover relationships and they're already in Dataset, that would just be redundant because you could query Dataset for those relationships already using their API.
Ideally, I could, but not many are using that linkage in Dataset. And also, we would still need to classify the research papers.
Also, I, as
Okay.
CMR architect, would like to steal this GraphDB instance and use it to improve things like relevancy and related data sets in CMR and Earth Data Search. So yeah, please put these in.
And we do have other potential spin-off benefits, you know, like impact assessments, for instance, but at least for right now, the main use case is the usage-based discovery tool.
But you know, the point that Margaret makes, I think, is important because you're talking about crowdsourcing here. The crowd that is feeding Crossref, for instance, is all scientific publishers in the world, and they're publishing those 10 to the 6th papers that you're talking about. You know, it's like any crowdsourced data. It may be noisier than this honed, curated stuff that you're working on here, but the volume of it could be interesting as a starting point, certainly.
Right.
Yes, I agree. But we do need some high quality curated stuff in order to drive the machine learning. Because remember, it's not just the relationship we're looking for, we're also looking for the classification of the articles.
I would be careful. I would be careful about using the words high quality there. I noticed that you think they're important enough that you put them in italics. And you know, these are human curated, I think would be probably a better description.
All right, I will.
They're not necessarily high quality.
But what I was thinking of is that because this is something that the repository, some of them already track, but maybe what we could do if we produce those lists is to simply add your key terms to an already created list of relationships between dataset DOIs and paper DOIs.
Yeah,
might
there's
be
also
faster than rummaging
make data
papers.
count.
Right.
Make data count is another fairly large project in the global infrastructure to try to encourage standards in the way that people count usage of data.
Jonathan, would you like to say something?
Oh yeah, I think my point has passed now, but Madison brought up a tool, and I think Ted's bringing up another tool to identify these linkages. So if you want to go ahead and use those tools for this foraging, please do so. You know, as long as you can then go in and verify those linkages and apply the topic keyword.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'd like to see how those tools perform.
I think one of the important points, Chris, is that we could improve their performance through this work that you're doing here by adding the links that you're mentioning to those databases.
All right.
I think I'd also like to see what was pointed out a little bit earlier, that is, as this data is collected, if we can expose an API to others to be able to pull from it.
Yes, we will eventually expose an API once we get this into the production cloud.
Perfect. And to some of the other comments, this is Bruce Wilson from Oak Ridge Stack. We've been looking at some of these questions, and we find that the citation information is pretty good for journals, but for some reason, even when papers cite data sets with DOIs, it's not always in things like Dataset. Web of Science has been better about it, and the Elsevier tools, unfortunately, explicitly don't include them. So we don't get information on citations from those paths.
Yeah, absolutely. I can confirm, Bruce, your findings. The Dataset has crumbles of what Google Scholar or Scopus could return. And I talked to Dataset folks, and they're saying they leverage on event data from Crossref, and that event data was broken for years now, and they're waiting for it to be fixed.
Well, I think at this point, we might want to move into the breakout room so some of the folks can get started foraging. And I would encourage those of you that have mentioned other tools, like Jonathan said, it would be great if you could try those other tools out for this use case and let us know how well they work.
Great. So just jumping in here. So I've made the breakout rooms and I'm about to open all 5 of them. So we have it set so people should be able to self-select into the rooms that they want to go to. And you can do that, I think, at the bottom of your screen within the sort of breakout rooms tab. You should be able to select which room. But if you're having trouble, feel free to just write a note in the chat and I can also assign you to a specific room and help you get in that way. So just let me know if you're having any trouble.
Quick one, Chris, do we come back here?
Yes, we will come back here at 12:15 to do an after action survey and see how things went. So we've got what, 37 minutes to go. So that should be enough to find 1 or 2, particularly if you use one of the easier techniques. But one of the things we will be looking for is, how long does it take to find something like this? What kind of rate can we go at? Alan, do you have a question?
Yeah, so I got all excited and I jumped ahead and I found one. But I clicked the Team Sea Level thing because I was going to join Team Sea Level. But in my excitement, I found a flooding one, even though I think I was looking for sea level based flooding. So I stuck the flooding one in the sea level Google Doc. Does that matter?
Nope. So long as you identified the topic in the document, it doesn't matter, except that you just gave one to the other team. Now, we're not really doing this as a competition anymore. We thought of that originally, but this is not going to be a competition or a race. So what you did is fine.
Great. And Chris, do you want me to simply just recall everybody back right at 12:15?
Yeah, let's recall everyone back at 12:15.
Okay, great. Yeah, it looks like most people are off into the rooms, but there's still some folks here. If you're having trouble, let me know and I can help get you to your room.
Okay, I'm going to jump off to the crew motley room to see how that's going. If I can find.
All right, we look like just a couple of us left here. Is anybody having trouble getting into the room they want to? Maybe Amanda and Paul, do you have any questions or you want to be assigned to rooms, or are you good?
Hello.
Hello, Jeff.
Yes, I thought I could get into a breakout, but
Good
failed.
luck. Okay, well, I can help assign you to one. Are you looking for a particular room?
Probably Motley.
Motley Crew. Okay. I'm assigning you.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's easy to accept. I don't know.
I see it. Yep.
Oh, great. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Hello, David. Welcome. Just saw your name popped up here. Everybody's in breakout rooms, so I'm just, oops, looks like you're done. Hello, Jennifer. Just to say hi and let you know that folks are in breakout rooms right now. And if you would like a little orientation, I can help Hello. Yaitza?
Yes.
Hi. Just to let you know, we're all in the group is all in
In the
breakout
rooms.
sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out which one to join because I needed to, yeah, we were in another meeting. We just jumping in here.
No worries. Let me know if you need any help, but yeah, but all the notes are in the Kiko chat. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye. Hello. There's some new folks. Happy Katie.
Person
Hi.
popped in. Hey, I had a half hour and I wanted to see what was going on.
Yeah, no worries. So the group is mostly in breakout sessions right now, working to like actually data forage things related to the, I don't know if you can look at the breakout sessions, but there's
Yeah,
like
I'm looking at it.
different
Team
teams.
Life, Team Fire,
Yeah.
Team Flood.
So I think just feel free to jump in with whichever.
I'm gonna join the motley crew because I have
Great.
very few opinions otherwise. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Hello, Elena. Welcome to the room.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Just letting you know that most of the crew is all in breakout rooms.
Yeah, I've been kind of going to the different breakout rooms just to see what's going on in each one. Yeah.
It's like feel free to, float around. So definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Hi, Karen.
Coming late here, but I just figured out I can possibly go to one of the rooms.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say, is that folks are mostly in breakout rooms, but you can choose any of the rooms to go to, or however, and that's Frank, same with you. Yeah.
Do you know how much longer they'll be in the breakout?
Another 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll do that. Thank you.
Hey, Bar, how are you?
Good, Susan. How are you?
I'm good. Are they coming back to the main room before they close out?
Yeah, I believe they said recall everybody back at 12:15. So
12:15. Okay, I'll come back at 12:15. I'm really curious to hear the feedback.
Yeah, I know. I want to know what happened.
It's hard.
Yeah, I bet. Were you in some of the breakout groups?
I was in the sea level rise for a bit, and then I had to go take care of something. But it pointed out to me how hard this really is. So I'm the least qualified person to crowdsource, but I'm really interested in hearing their feedback. So I'll be back in a little bit.
Okay, great. See you soon.
if we haven't already, we can bring everybody back from the breakouts.
Yeah.
Well, where's the link to the Google form, Chris? I couldn't find it on the.
Which form? The
original for adding your relationships.
It's in the it's in that Kiko chat Google Doc. It says 722 Foraging for Dataset Usage Relationships. And if you look down to where the teams are listed, those are hyperlinks to the forms.
Thank you very much.
That'll teach me to be too clever with linking.
It's all about empathy, Chris. You know.
I know. All right, do we have everybody back? I guess we do.
Yeah, all the rooms should be closed, so.
All right, sweet. Thanks, Bar. All right, so now I just want to do a quick little after action discussion / survey. So we've actually put together a Google form for an after action survey with some moderately detailed questions, but it's not super long. I'm going to share my screen and show you what it looks like. And then I'm going to come back and talk about a couple of the takeaways that we already have. Right. We're going to ask you, was it easy? Was it hard? Did you have any fun? I hope at least some of you had some fun. I know I have a lot of fun when I do this, although I go down a lot of particular data set article rabbit holes, but they're fun rabbit holes. Especially if you have any ideas on how to make this more fun, we'd really appreciate that. Did you learn or develop any new strategies or hacks for foraging? And so this is where I know several of you were suggesting particular repositories of relationships that we might be able to utilize, either through, I don't know, the API if they have one, or it might just be, a faster way to manually forage. So definitely, if you haven't already put those in the chat or in the Kiko chat document, please do so, or put them in this form. Now, we emphasize DOIs for data sets. We had a lot of discussion beforehand how much to emphasize that. And so we'd like to hear your opinion on how important those DOIs are for the data sets. If you ran across any particularly surprising data set usage relationship, we'd love to see that. And so put that in. And then also, if you're interested in doing some more of this kind of foraging, in the days, weeks, and months afterward, we will always need some human curated labeling of the research articles, even if we've got those relationships worked out. And eventually we're going to go to work on some articles where we don't have DOI citations. And so teasing out what data sets they were using is a machine learning problem. So if anyone's interested in continuing to help us with this human curation aspect to feed the machine learning, as well as the usage-based tool, we'd really appreciate that. And if you are, the next screen will take you to ask you to fill out your email. If you're not, just click no, and that'll take you to the submit button. All right, so I want to stipulate already that we did get a lot of good information on sources for data set usage, graphs, relationships, if you will, in a number of different areas. We're kind of still, most of these seem to still be missing that research topic classification that we also need. But definitely, I think if we put some of those graph repositories together with the machine learning classification that we're doing, that we can, I think that makes this problem tractable, that we can scale up to the needed number of relationships to put into the document. And with that, I'd like to open the floor to other takeaways that you may have
had. Carl said in the session that it's just interesting. I agree. And one of the, so I was looking a lot at Datasite Commons, which is an attempt to do similar things. And one of the interesting things is in the Datasite Commons, and from Crossref or Datasite, you can get author names for these papers, and then you can get in some cases those authors, and then you can search those ORCIDs for publications. So if an author is using a data set in one paper, maybe it increases the probability that they're using that data set in another paper. Or maybe they're using other related data sets from other sources. We talked about NOAA and NASA data sets.
Right.
So finding the ORCIDs, which just like any of these identifiers, there could certainly be more of them in the data, but you can usually find at least one ORCID for the corresponding author for a paper, and in some cases more. And that gives you another foraging path.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks, Ted. Any other takeaways? Any sort of larger takeaways, like how is the community doing with citing data sets and stuff like that?
Well,
jumping back.
Observation from the team life is that teaming this is very helpful, because when we would try to work from an existing data set, say GBIF, if each one of us tried to go into GBIF and figure it out, we could duplicate a lot of our effort. So if we just start from a common starting point, and then when it comes to the topic annotations, work from that common spreadsheet, that's a lot more productive than we were all trying to tackle this individually.
Interesting.
And that also was true for the LTER folks. So going to be giving you, Chris, a long, hopefully a very large spreadsheet with LTER data.
Excellent.
We totally circumvented the form.
Okay, that works.
I want to comment on Jonathan's. One of the things we're actually, so what we're doing then is adding the topics, but there's actually kind of some missing topics in this list, which I don't know if this is fixed. For instance, there's lots of water, things that are related to water that aren't ocean, but you don't have a fresh water except for water resources, but they're not really resources, they're biology having to do with water.
Yeah, so the topics are very light on anything related to biology. You may have noticed that. And so we would love to get some suggestions for particularly how to handle some of those biologically related topics.
Yeah, the problem with lists of terms is keeping them detailed, but not focusing too much in any one area.
Right.
Or getting too deep in one area. That's really difficult.
Hey, Chris, this is Nate.
Hey, Nate.
Hey, our group had a great find. I forgot whose name it was, but what he found was that since we are zeroing in on DOIs, if we included in our Google Scholar search the prefix 10.5067, and then the topic, which in our case was flood, that gave us a nice collection of responses that we could then maybe parcel out amongst us and start filling out the form. So we had like 28 pages of results came back, which showed all of the DOI references for ESDIS products.
Right.
By category, by topic. So that's another way to divide and conquer. If you just want to do it by organization and just assign the task to an organization, and just go through your DOI, just look for, your large organization by that prefix, and just see what good things come up out of that.
Right. I mean, so you do have to be able to click through to the article to see exactly which data sets they were using. But yeah, that's a really good technique.
So with the shoulders that people were talking about earlier, is that the prefix? Okay.
So Nate, that's what I did with sea level. Did a sea level in 10.5067. I got a bunch of data sets. And in fact, Ken had provided a link from NOAA to give about 30 different data sets that have to do with sea level.
Yeah,
That's
it would be
great.
interesting to learn. I noticed that the NOAA shoulder seems to be used both for NOAA publications and data sets. Is there a simple way to distinguish between those, or are they all just really in the same pool?
No, I think that's all been separated now. I think early on when we first started doing DOIs, that might have been true because we were doing publication DOIs and data DOIs. But I think they're all separated now and have their own prefixes. But I'd have to look up what those are.
Having said that, though, I think Estes project is doing 10.5067 for data as well as documents, right?
We are, although we don't have a lot of documents in that category.
True. Right now we don't have any
Unfortunately.
documents. Yeah.
Not like NOAA does, which is putting on a lot.
I'm wondering if that should be changed.
Yeah, I'm wondering that too.
And for historical reasons, ORNL DAX are in 10.3334.
Right, and I think CDAC also has a different shoulder as well.
Yes.
Right. And for the Estes DOIs, we have a particular element in our suffix that distinguishes documents from data.
Ah, I did not know that. Okay, that's good to know. All right, I want to thank everybody for participating. Someone want to get one last word in, I heard.
Chris, I just chatted the three. We're using three separate prefixes: archive data publications and global monitoring division for legacy reasons uses their own. So those are the three that we're now using. That older one, that 721, I don't believe we're 7289. I think we're no longer using for new ones.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. And can we make sure we save this chat? I don't know how to do that exactly, but we're going to want to mine a lot of this chat because there's just some really good stuff in it.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, at the bottom of the chat, you can press, there's three dots.
I see. Yeah.
And that'll save it in a directory with today's date.
I'm going to do that for you, Chris. Don't worry about it.
All right.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody for participating. Don't forget to fill in the survey. I'm going to post that one last time here. And so thanks everyone. This is going to be a big help to us. I think we learned a lot as well as getting a really good set of results to help drive some of our machine learning. So I really appreciate this and I hope you have a great rest of the ESIP. We will be tolling all these up and then eventually posting the final results in the Kudos channel as well as the Discovery channel.
Thank you.
And with that, I'll close out and everybody have a great ESIP and thank you again.